Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Construction Business Blueprint YouTube channel. This week, we're going to be talking about, does the business still run in your head? With my clients, and I often try to share everything I do with my clients inside my private mentoring group. We're kind of on the theme at the minute of leadership, and while it may not seem like it, there's a lot of obvious questions. We spoke about recently about, if your business, if you went away for 2 weeks, what would happen? We're kind of still staying on that theme of communication, team, trying to get things to operate and run without you, trying to just get things running more smoothly, not necessarily stepping away, but just how to get your day-to-day running much more smoothly, much more straightforward. Stop you repeating yourself and doing kind of low-value tasks, run about chasing your tail, and being able to maybe switch off and get things a bit more planned and be a bit more strategic with your time, which everybody, it's not trying to reinvent the wheel, it's not trying to wave a magic wand, it's just doing simple things, but approaching things slightly different. The title of this week's episode is based on, is your business still running in your head? And it was one we went through with my clients recently about building an SOP, right? So an SOP is just a standard operating procedure, and it's not something you would usually hear in this industry or in this space. But what it really is if I was to ask you a question, right? Not like, if you go away for 2 weeks, but if something happened, okay? Shit hits the fan, you need to be somewhere, God forbid something happens to you health-wise, you get brought into hospital, or something happens that needs your time and attention. Would your guys be standing on site, running around like lemons, banging into walls, not really knowing what's going on, what to do? Would your clients not really know who's coming, when they're coming, or what's really happening? The honest answer is no. The honest answer is yeah, the case would be nobody would have a clue. I have to maybe do it on a daily basis. I'm even having to go on site and literally hold people's hand and take them right through the task, and maybe having to repeat myself then the next day and the next day. For some of us, that's just a reality, okay? And it's not a dig or it's not an insult. It's just how things have always been. You're constantly just giving out instructions and repeating yourselves. Guys aren't really showing any initiative or taking any responsibility or ownership. But responsibility, ownership, initiative is all things that have to be taught, that have to be trained into people. So if you've never really taken the time to train your staff or try to put anything like this in place, then again, it's not a criticism, it's just how things have always been, and maybe you think that that's the only way it can be done. Constantly having to be there, constantly having to be over their shoulder, constantly having to be there in the morning or maybe in the evening, or maybe have to be there all day. Depending on team size as well, this is important. But usually it's not because the team are rubbish, it's not because the team aren't any good, it's because nothing is written down, it's all still living in your head. So I've said this a million times on this channel and with my clients, that just because things are in your head, it makes sense to you, doesn't mean it makes sense to anybody else. And people who say I'm not too sure how to start this process, or how to create an SOP, or how to break down a procedure of what I want people to do, etc., etc. But you do know that the knowledge is there, it's always been there, it's been there as long as you've been in business, but it's just stored in here, and sometimes people struggle to get that down on paper. So let's really simplify that. Let's make it really, really, really simple. What SOP, put the jargon and the fancy analogies to the side, it's just how we work here, how we do things in here, and it's written down. And it's just like a step-by-step. It's not like a policy folder or a big massive document that you've asked ChatGPT or some sort of AI platform to create me an SOP, and it has no idea anything about your business. It's all, again, when using AI, it's all about context, okay? So it's not just about a big document that someone has to sit and read and go through and learn, like an encyclopedia of every eventuality or every possible thing that goes on in your business. It's everything that you've carried around in your head for the past however long you've been in business. 5 years, 15 years, 20 years in business, finally written down on paper. That could be, we'll go into it in more detail, but it could be even like how we price a job, or how an inquiry comes in, how it's dealt with. How do we respond to a client? How do we actually price the job? Where does an inquiry get saved to? It could be even given an instruction, like when we set up the site, we contact the client 24 hours before. When we go to the site, we put floor protection down, we put this, we do that. Before taking out a chop saw on the grass, we put down a tarpaulin, you name it. They are things that are all done, every single day, but it's not quite documented. So I forgot to do that today. And you're like, well, as it's part of the SOP, it's what we do every day. It's kind of, you're drilling it into them, you're making that, you're almost creating a habit, okay? A good habit. That's something that's just constantly done time and time again. No matter what the job is, no matter what the project is, or who the client is, it's the same standard process every single time. The principle is there. And again, this is something that you maybe tell the young lad every morning, right? Get the tarpaulin out, put it in the grass, right? Do this, great. Go and get the protection in the carpet, put it on the carpet, whatever it may be. It's stuff that you're repeating all the time, and this time you're putting it down, you're saying, right, this is what it is. Every job, this is what we do. And sometimes, yes, you have to spell it out every single time for people, but when it's written down once, you don't have to repeat yourself. They can just refer back to it every time. When starting a job, here's the SOP, here's what we need to do. Like I always say, if it lives in your head, you're not running the business, okay? You are the business. And that's what we're trying to, like we said, everyone's complaint to me all the time is guys don't show initiative. Guys don't just take things and do it themselves. You know, you think he would know by now, but that's what we're trying to, rather than complain about it, we're actually going to try and solve that problem and try and lighten the load for you. And sometimes some of the kickback I will get is, well, the guys aren't going to like me, you know, telling them what to do. I'm putting it out in plain terms for them. Maybe you've heard of this term, maybe you haven't in this game, but micromanagement. Okay, micromanagement is constantly being over somebody's shoulder, constantly giving them a task, but then take them the whole way through the task the whole way through. And it's something that is rife in this industry. Okay, and I often use a phrase, say, focus on the outcome, not the method. But again, what we're doing here is we're going to break down, here's what I expect of you as an employee. Everyone has their own sort of rules, their own sort of targets, their own sort of way of doing things, their own level of responsibility. For a labourer, it may be that ensure the site is clean and tidy, ensure there's no trip hazards, ensure that blah, 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 you name it. Materials are stored in a certain way, the signage is in place, the protection is down, whatever it may be. Their SOP could be different from your lead joiner or your lead bricklayer or landscaper, spark, whatever your trade is. Standing over somebody's shoulder, saying the same thing for the 100th time, that's micromanagement. You know, if somebody knows what is expected of them, they know what you want from the outcome, but they're not exactly doing it your way, or they're not doing it in the very, very finite step that you've maybe had in your head that you haven't communicated to them, but then you're constantly adjusting them, constantly fixing them. That's micromanagement, and what that does is it just pisses people off. So when you give somebody a task, they're kind of just, you know, they want to just be left to it to do it themselves. These guys are all capable, by the way. These are, you know, they should be anyway, qualified tradesmen or at least a reliable labourer. And again, if that is an issue, we can get into. That's a different conversation. You know, if you're giving people instructions, if you're making it really simple, at the end of it, you go through this process and you get to the end of this process, you've mapped it all out, and they're still not following it, well, at least you can say, okay, here's what you've missed, and here's what's going wrong, and this is why it's going wrong. I've mapped it out and you're not following it. That's a different conversation. And again, that's a good way to be able to identify when someone's just being ignorant or difficult, or they're never going to fall in line and they're just a bad egg and need to be got rid of. Having these SOPs highlights a lot of things. It's who's working well and who's working not. So writing it down properly once so you never have to say it again, that's freedom. And trust me, your guys are going to enjoy this. When I usually put this in place for my clients, we make it really simple, really easy. Again, not a big encyclopedia, nothing strange or wonderful. Just simple, plain terms of everything they already know, but you're being very clear so there's no ambiguity, no miscommunication, no nothing. You're just setting the expectation, here is our standard. I often get the feedback from the guys saying, when I'm on site now and I'm there every day, the guys seem to perform worse. But when I step away, when I give them the clear instruction, the SOP is there, what I expect from them on a day-to-day is there every day, they seem to perform much better and everything is followed to a T. But that could be because when you're on site again, you're micromanaging, you're standing over their shoulder, you're nitpicking on things. Sometimes you do just need to get out of the way and let these guys do their job. But again, with the right thing in place, like a nice SOP or a procedure, or at least a day-to-day breakdown of what I expect of you on this site. Putting anything new in place in business is going to be uncomfortable. Not just for you, but for your team. They're going to say, things are changing here, like why are we putting this in place? What's going on here? What great ideas you got now? And again, when you try to put anything new to an employee, the employee mentality is going to kick in. How's this benefiting me in any way? Well, that's a great question. So you can flip it on them. You can often say, I don't have the time and the energy to stand over your shoulder explaining these things 100 times. I'm sure you've said that to guys several times as well. So you say, look, you also don't need me to sit here and stand over you and tell you a million times as well. You don't have the time and energy for us to keep having these conversations and me constantly interrupting you. So all I've done here is I've written it down, made it really, really simple so that you can follow the steps. And if you have any questions, you can ask me questions. But to be honest, you're here. I trust you to do what you need to do. All I'm doing is mapping it out so the communication is there. I haven't forgotten to tell you anything. You know, reading it, that whether the expectation is clear, whether it's actually doable what you're asking me to do, and we can have feedback on that. And you can have your input, you can have your say, and then we'll come to some sort of mutual agreement, and then we'll move forward from here on there. So rather than me constantly ringing you, giving you a million instructions, or coming on the site and disrupting your whole flow when you're trying to do something, I'm going to give you this at the beginning. We can read through it together, agree on it. You can ask me questions, you can tell me you don't think something's right, then we'll agree on it, we'll move on, and I'll just leave you to it, and then it's yours to run with, and I'll leave you to it, and you do what you do best and get the job done. So what's important there is that an SOP, or when you put down any sort of process on paper that you want somebody to follow in your business, you need to make it a working document. Okay, so it's not a set in stone tablet that can't be changed and like you must. Okay, it's not a list of rules This is like, here's what I think the best approach to do this is. Here is like what we do when we first come to a site. This is what we do when dealing with a customer. This is the kind of things that I would expect you to respond to customers if they ask this or ask that. So you're kind of laying down the boundaries and the rules, and not the rules, but the laws of kind of how things work in this company. What good looks like and what bad looks like and what the expectation is. But again, if they come to you and say, look, I've been following this and this part here definitely needs some work, there's an issue here, or something's wrong, or to be honest, this is shite, or whatever else, that's good feedback. Take it on board, listen to what they've got to say, and then improve on it and move forward. It's not a done once and move on type of thing. This is something that's constantly going to be getting changed and evolved, and hopefully as team then do come on board with it more, they're going to be coming in with suggestions, and you can build this into something that works really well for everybody. So again, the whole basis and what the point is of this is there's no ambiguity and there's no excuses. So it protects both parties. It protects you as the business owner and it protects them as the employee or subcontractor. It's written down so nobody is guessing. Nobody does something stupid because they didn't know, or they can't use that excuse anymore. Well, I didn't know I had to do that here, and you're going, lads, refer back to the SOP. It's here, it's written down. Can't really get away with saying that because it's black and white. It stops the whole coming in the side and being going, whoa, what's happening here? What is that? It alleviates that whole conversation, and you never have to have it again because it's clear what everybody's doing. And if that does happen, it's like, guys, we said we were going to do A, B, and C. We're now doing A, D, and F. How did this happen? Where did it come to? And then there's a conversation to be had rather than just an argument back and forth. How I came to this conclusion again is built through experience. So I used to walk a whole site. I would maybe had 12, 13 floors with different men on every floor. Say I could have had 50 men per floor, or 50 men on the whole project split across so many floors. I would have walked the site, talked to 5 or different maybe team leaders or 4 men or something. And by the time I left, I couldn't remember what I'd said to the first guy, the second guy, or whatever. So I started documenting everything. I started having these conversations. I started saying, wait, what is the non-negotiables, the things that have to happen on every project? Like the health and safety kind of stuff, the quality sort of stuff of how we would leave, say, a piece of pipework, or how we would leave a finish on this or a finish on that. Writing those things down as a rule of thumb or a principle on any project. Then the finite details I would have walked through with them. Again, I would have used maybe something like Site Audit Pro. I would have recorded, taken photos and jotted down notes during the conversation. Everything I've said to him, I've written down as I'm walking around, making sure he understands. And then once I was finished talking to that guy, I would send him all those notes, a recap of everything we've just talked about. I still do that now in this business, which is a completely different business, but it's the same principle. If I have a meeting, I'm recording that meeting, I'm taking notes. I use AI, I record the conversation. If you can do that, even better. There's loads of different class things out there that you can do. But again, this is more just for the standard operating procedure, or the standard expectations. And again, you could literally just use AI, you could hit record, transcribe it, and just talk through. When I come to a site, I would expect the lads to do this. I would expect the lads to make a phone call 1 hour before attending somebody's house. I would expect when they get to site, the first thing they would do is do this. If they're working upstairs, they would put this protection down. They would do this, they would do that. When they finish, they would leave it like this. They would let the client know what's happening tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. Like the standard things that you would do in every job. Like if you were running this by yourself still, or maybe you are, and this is a good place to do this. If you are still a one-man band and working by yourself, it's like, what are my good practices when I go to site, or when I go to somebody's house, or when I go through a job? And it's just literally documenting those processes. I usually do this, I usually do that, I usually do whatever. And even if that is, and you're somebody who's on their own, or someone with a small team, that's again holding you accountable for, here's what works well. And when things get really busy and things get chaotic, you can always refer back to, here's the basics that I need to follow to keep everything organized and keep everything in line. It kills any ambiguity, because ambiguity is what kills standards. So this just again is improving communication, and most issues with any team or any client always boils down to pure communication. Somebody was unclear of some step or some part of the process somewhere, and that's where it all fell down. That's where tensions get high, that's where arguments happen, and that's where people get pissed off. So like I say, this protects both parties, all parties. You could use this for the client as well. Like here's what's going to happen when we come to site, and you could send this to them as part of your onboarding when you go to get somebody on site. Could you have this prepared, that prepared, do this, do that, clear the area, do this. You could do that with a client and have that same instruction sent to them every time. That's an SOP. Again, but it protects both parties, okay? So it means that if a client kicks off, they're pissed off about something, and the lads are covered, because he can come down and say, Mark, I done X, Y, and Z exactly as it says here. The client had an issue, I don't know how to deal with it. And you can go, okay, well, you followed the process that I've asked you to follow, and if it's still a problem, I'll have the conversation. But if it's hearsay about, well, I did do this or I didn't do that, and it's their word against theirs or something else, it's also proof that somebody's doing a good job. So if you can say, look, every step is being followed here, that's fantastic. You've now got something to measure off. Everything's being followed, everything's going as it should do. And again, if somebody is not performing and someone's doing against it, again, you can have something to measure off. Guys, you're missing this process. This wasn't done, that wasn't done, that wasn't done. It's clearly documented here. You're missing steps. There's a problem here. And you can, bring in some sort of a rule like once, okay, twice, that's a warning, third time, this is a serious problem and we need to have a conversation and you maybe need to go. I know I've given examples the whole way through this video or this series or this episode, but let's talk about what actually goes in it. You could look at the standards and ethos of the business. So how you respect the company on or off site, even driving the van, in their own time or outside of ours or when they're driving a van, keeping the vans clean and tidy, making sure it's clean, making sure whatever, it's kept at a high standard. Don't be smoking in the van, don't be piling rubbish in the van, don't be throwing things out of the window, don't be speeding, don't be whatever you think it could be. It could be PPE is worn at all times, no exceptions. It could be every call gets answered or responded to within 24 hours. How we work could be something like putting protection down, dust sheets, cutting stations, health and safety cordoning stuff off. Every site happens no matters what. Don't block the neighbour's driveway. Ask for permission and where to put the skip before every project before it comes. Like things like that bring up difficult conversations. Dumping something in somebody's grass and like, you just ruined my grass or whatever else. Again, you could put in here client communications, how quickly a client needs responded to, what permission you have or what kind of questions you can answer to a client, like are you here tomorrow or whatever else. But it's like if a client's asking you for a variation or extra work, you have to stop and then bring it back to me and communicate that to me. Like that's an SOP. Like don't go back and forth with the customer about a complaint. Don't go back and forth with the customer about X, Y, and Z. Again, it could be arriving and leaving site, times. It could be procedures there of what happens, locking up, key handling. It could be whatever. It could even come down to timekeeping, hours, admin, you name it. It could be any part of the business of what kind of happens. And it again applies not just to employees, but to subcontractors too. And again, guys, before we leave, if you're struggling with this, a good wee tool to do here is think of your best job. Literally sit down and picture this in your mind. You're going to a property or you're going to a site. If you could kind of break down, this is what I would like to happen in an ideal situation. This is what I would like the guys to do or follow in an ideal situation. They're checking materials on a Monday. They're telling me, making me aware of what's required on site within 24 hours. They're doing this, they're doing that. Think of an ideal scenario or think of your best employee and think, what does that employee do well that I want other guys to do? And literally write those good things down. He does this, he does that. That can become the SOP. You can actually build these around your best either employee or your best subcontractor and think, or model it on when I was doing this myself and it was just me, here's what I was doing and this is what I would love everybody to do. Then that's a great way to start this process off. It doesn't have to be complicated, and again, it's a working document, so it's not one and done, constantly moving, constantly evolving, constantly improving. Okay guys, so hopefully that was clear. Any questions as usual, which I'm sure there is a few, there always is, please feel free to reach out at any point in time. You can either drop a comment below, you can find us on socials, drop me a DM at any time, and I'd love to hear from you.